Welcome back, mere mortals. Today, I have a conversation for you with Ian Parke. Now, he is what I explained it as a sort of a signal fire for the entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs of what we're seeing today. Now, he is a co-founder of FinPay as well as Nextform, and he actually began his entrepreneurial journey in 2017 with his very first technical company. We, of course, talked about his companies, the process of building up these businesses, the I think 30 to 50 odd individuals that he also looks after as CEO and founder of these different companies. But we got into much more than that. His daily routine, some of the ways that he got into the game, especially through asset management and through to the financial sector of today. And we talked among many other things. I'll leave it at that because I wanted you to listen in to Ian Parke. Ian, mate, thanks so very much for coming onto the Mere Mortals podcast. It's interesting that I kind of found out about you firstly LinkedIn through a couple of posts that a couple of other people were sort of posting, but then I don't know if you know this, but through the Giants Blackbird community, I also saw that you were one of the individuals who was on there as well. Because I sort of put through an idea. Now mine's just an idea, and yours obviously something that we'll probably talk through as you are the CEO and founder of a couple of companies, FinPay, Next, and a few other things here and there. So, but what I wanted to ask you, because it's probably the one thing I wanted to kickstart you with, is the Jordan Belfort entrepreneurial course that you did a little while ago. Now, I love Jordan. I love guys like Grant as well. Was it worth it? And what was sort of the key takeaway you took from that?
Look, it was fantastic. And I think that was one of his first trips to Australia. God, I can't remember when it went. I think it was 2009. It was a long time ago, but it was absolutely phenomenal. And look, we did the whole experience. And I actually took my mum, of all people, and I was like, because she was like, watched the movie, read the book. She's like, yeah, this is going to be great. But she's not anything to do with sales related role. Anyway, we went along and we were kind of like, okay, I didn't really know what to expect because I've always heard of these high pressure sales seminars where it's just like, you get out there and you ram that product in everyone's throat and you just let them take it. And I was like, okay. Anyway, Jordan really instills in people, I guess, the straight line methodology around, looping questions and better understanding discovery around pain and really solving that. And I think that is something that I really took away. And now, I implement it every day in my companies now is we're solutions architects. We're there to solve people's pain, to make their life easier, whether that's from taking payments or to processing rental applications. We do it. That's what it's there. So we listen to our users and we better understand what are they asking for? What do they need? What are they struggling with day to day? And how do we make their lives better? The other thing I took away from it, which is paramount, which is probably why I've got such a big team, is if you don't know how to do something, don't pretend you do. Bring someone in that does, because you're going to waste time, money, and a lot of effort trying to either figure it out or make a crap load of mistakes and not get it right in the end when you should. And then you're doubling down and you're going to have to spend double the amount of money to bring someone in to fix your problem or fix the errors that you've made and then fix your problem. So they were my kind of two key takeaways. And I guess, that's how I've really managed to build great teams on both sides of the business so far.
Yeah, right. And so if that was at 2009, were you still in that space where you're working in that asset management space at the time as well?
Yeah, so I actually it was pre that. So I was I just got out of a labour hire and recruitment company based out of North Queensland. Quite fortuitously, actually, I started a labour hire and recruitment company, and then the mining downturn happened, and it was just crippled. Like nobody, Tell you what. Talk about failing gracefully. That was probably the biggest hit that I've ever taken. I was like, okay, well, and firstly, it's my first kind of foray into business. I was like, yeah, this is going to be great. Got everything lined up. We had contracts, we had staff. It was fantastic. And then, coal price dropped out below $1.50 a ton. Mining companies weren't hiring contractors. Everything just dried up. It was, we're gonna shelter our revenue and our bottom line. So we're going to operate on skeleton and keep going.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, great. So I kind of took a break for 6 months, and that's when I went to that Jordan Belfort course. And after that, I really kind of started a hedge fund working in upstream oil and gas investment, predominantly out of North Africa. So lots of trips to the North African region, Benin, Cotonou, Nigeria, dealing with 45-degree heat in a full wool suit like a twit.
That would have been excellent. I wanted to ask you though, because that seems really interesting. So I want to dive into it. But before that, before the Jordan, I'd actually be curious to find out what actually triggered you to, you're working in that space in terms of, the hiring process and the labor. What made you decide to go, now I'm going to do this on my own self, because obviously that was the first company, it sounds like. What triggered that? Have you always had that in your mindset where you went, yeah, okay, I want to be my own boss and do my own things?
Yeah, look, look, at such a young age, there's two key things that that really drive you. It's either money or it's a passion for what you're doing to start your own business. Mine was money. And plain and simple, it's not that now. Like, I really love what I do now, but back then it was kind of like I had friends and mentors that were kind of in that space, in that labor hire recruitment space, working in the resources sector, and I was like, and these guys are making serious dollars, and I was like, cool. So I was actually on a mine site working for Rio Tinto as an operator, and I was kind of standing there, and I was actually talking to a high voltage electrician, and I was like, and he goes, yeah, I'm getting X amount, and there's a really big shortage of these like high voltage like electricians on site, and I was like, huh, okay, cool. So I went away and did a bit of research, found out that the foreign skills assessments for high voltage electricians was relevant to Australia. And then I basically provided a gap between a skills shortage here in Oz and finding foreign skilled workers to come in. And just so happened it didn't last very long, but anyway, what are you going to do? And that was it. I was kind of like, cool. But for me, then it was money, purely a monetary value that I was looking at. Now, with everything that I do, it's much more about enjoyment and innovation and really providing product to great people and figuring the world out with great technology.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. We were talking a little bit on Mere Mortals probably the last couple of months where, it's not a bad thing if you begin on the side of, if it's money, if it's for what you wouldn't say it's a, particularly positive reason, as long as it gets you started, then you can be in the game, you can get moving, then you start moving towards, something that you're a bit more passionate towards, or you can kind of get over that hurdle to almost in a mindset, you go, all right, well, yes, in my mindset, I had it that I needed to be earning this much or make this much money. But once you achieve that, it's like, okay, well, now either you can...
Where to next?
Yeah, exactly. That's where almost that passion can take over and let you continue on to, go and grow that and go from there.
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
No, exactly. No, I was just going to, 100%.
No, definitely. So, all right. So you went through obviously to LA, but I have to ask. So that hedge fund you were talking about, obviously in North Africa, was it again through mentors or individuals that kind of drew you to say, okay, this seems like a good idea, or did you have some preconceived notions that, oh, okay, this is where I got to go as my next step?
Yeah, look, I had some guys that I was working with pretty closely from a friendship aspect, as well as some kind of mentors within the space of financial services. And the biggest thing that we identified is that diversified assets was something that no real hedge fund was kind of trying to tackle. Like they said that, yeah, we're in diversified asset classes, but that wasn't really as diversified as what we were looking at. And we were investing in countries that weren't overly developed when it came to infrastructure for this type of stuff. So we were coming in and going, okay, well, you're rich in natural resources. You need to develop either that's infrastructure around mining or infrastructure around oil and gas. How about we fund that, and then we can take a clip on the way through as a return once that pipeline's flourishing and doing well. And that was the kind of experience. Like with everything, we've always found opportunity where people generally don't want to go. If it's uncomfortable, I'm going there, like 100%. It doesn't matter how hard it is, because, and look, not saying that it works every time, but you're going to learn a lot, because being uncomfortable inhibits growth and it allows you to broaden your mind. And I think particularly running a technology company now, looking at emerging markets is really where it is. Like, we're really highly advanced here in Australia when it comes to regulation and everything that comes with it, whereas a lot of other countries aren't. So you can really start to build the building blocks with the people there, or the governments or the reserve banks, to really do something great, and kind of make your mark on the world.
Yeah, no, certainly. What do you think draws you to the fact of going after things that potentially a lot of other people would kind of sway away from? Have you always had that? Is that sort of carried through, or?
Yeah, look, it actually comes from my mum. So it's something that she instilled in me at a very young age, is that, you work hard, but and take risks, but calculated risks. You do your research, you better understand, you really understand as much as you can before you do something. Not saying it's not risky, but at least you know you're prepared for what you're going into. So if it happens, if that risk comes front face, you can kind of be like, oh well, I kind of it was potentially there and I knew it was there, so it's not as much of a shock. The other thing I guess you can kind of say is that if it comes too close, you can kind of be like, okay, well, I know there's potentially 3 ways that I can get around this through a pivot or trade execution or tapping people on the shoulder to step into this. It really provides you that stickiness. And I guess, it's something that it's just come to me as I've grown older too. And from an early age, it's been instilled in me. Strange, I know, but that's the way it is.
Well, it's interesting. And when people hear that, often, you can kind of hear it or you can read it and go, okay, yeah, makes sense. When it happens, I'll be ready. But do you have an example where you actually had to put that into traction? So was there a particular company or something where, the risk that you took, okay, it actually eventuated that the worst happened or something bad happened? Can you kind of recall that point, maybe to just share it, to go, okay, well, what was that pivot that you ended up doing there?
Dude, it was, and that's, look, it's probably one of the greatest, and it's so recent. Like, let's all look at coronavirus and everything that's going on, the pandemic. And then, it crippled a lot of companies or wound a lot of companies up or put them onto JobKeeper, did all that stuff. But anyway, March 2020, the world was kind of starting to reel back from this virus that was taking over and really no one knew what was going on. And we had built a payment infrastructure for US-based companies to come into APAC, to set up payments and really kind of operate, in a more cost-effective manner. And we were facilitating that. So we had about, fresh off the back of a trip to Silicon Valley, we had about 80 companies interested in our products and our infrastructure. And we were like, great, cool. On the opposite side of the table, we'd lined up all the infrastructure players that we'd done. We'd amalgamated APIs. We spent a lot of money on developing all that technology. And then, the world went into lockdown. Which would have been fine. We were kind of like, okay, cool. Well, we'll just coast through this. We'll hopefully come out when it's all good and we'll get going. Customers reached out to us and said, look, we don't know how this is going to play out. So we're not really interested in exploring new opportunities outside of our own jurisdiction. And we were kind of like, okay, well, that's fine. That's cool. We've still got the infrastructure side. We'll keep that. We'll just put everything on ice. We'll put everyone on ice. That's all sweet. And lo and behold, I got a call before I was going into a board meeting with a call from those, those infrastructure providers saying, we can't support it. The risk is too high. And I kind of went, great. So I've got a company with no customers and no product, and I'm about to, and I'm about to walk into a board meeting. So that was at 7:30 in the morning. And I was like, awesome. I really don't know where to go. I was like, I was literally flabbergasted. I was speechless. I was like, what do I say? And I was like, okay, well, we've got to go and have, a meeting with the shareholders and just say, look, we're done. That's it. We're wound up. There's nothing we can do. And I was standing in a coffee shop in Newstead in Brisbane. Yep. And this is back when you could just walk in and grab a coffee and go, or use Bopple or whatever. And anyway, and I remember watching this young lady in front of me, and she was trying to pay with her Apple Pay on her phone, and the terminal kept timing out, and it wasn't allowing her to pay for this transaction. Like, she couldn't pay for a coffee. She was getting frustrated. The merchant was getting frustrated. They couldn't take cash. They were just on card. And she was like, look, don't worry about it. And she kind of got in a huff and stormed out. And I was like, that really sucks. And I was like, imagine if you could just take payments through a mobile device. And I was kind of like, Anyway, so I sat there and paid for my coffee fine. And then I was walking back to our office, and I was like still contemplating doing this meeting. And then I was kind of like, and I ran into my CIO, who's my chief innovation officer. And I was like, telling him about it. And he's like, why don't we execute a pivot? Why don't we build that? And I was kind of like, okay, sweet. Let's map it out. So we kind of came away with this mission statement, because that's how I think all great businesses start, with a great mission statement to build off. And it was to make payments frictionless for merchants who want to be paid in any method, regardless. So no matter what the method, you can get paid, whether it's cash, QR, digital asset, buy now, pay later. We combine that all into a simple application that you get from the App Store. There's no more paper forms or no more online forms. Simple download, set up, go, done. And that was our pivot. And we managed to execute that in 9 months. So we were really like, we really kind of went, okay, we're kind of excited here. Not saying that near field communication payments has never been a thing, but payment aggregation at that scale has never really been executed. So yeah, that was kind of our pivot. And that was potentially facing a wind up of our company.
Yeah, it's amazing. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was obviously the origin story of what is FinPay. And yeah, it's crazy to see that, it's from a risk, and obviously what you're saying, at 7:30 in the morning sort of mind, so it's like, oh man, what am I going to do now, to almost at risk becoming what is today. And sometimes you look back at it, obviously, we're talking about this right now, and you look back and it's like, oh well, it eventuated and it worked well, but obviously at the time you would have been, in your own mind, like, okay, what is going to happen now? So sometimes it can look a lot worse, obviously, in the moment than when you actually look back at it previously. So FinPay for you now. So obviously we're talking about FinPay, which is what we're doing with the amalgamation, I guess, of those payments. Where are you at that stage? Is that sort of an MVP product that's about to sort of be launched and sort of marketed out broadly in APAC?
Yeah, so correct. So we some milestones that we've hit since then. I guess we aggregated 20 of the world's largest QR wallets into a single API and integrated them into that solution. So that's like PayMaya, Gcash, WePay, Alipay, AirPay. Like any of the big countries in APAC have generally got a dominant QR payment system. So we obviously went to them and went, look, we're building this. Are you interested? And they're like, yeah, cool. We're totally interested. And then we turned around to the acquirers like Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Cup, UnionPay, and went, hey, we're building this. Are you interested? And they obviously are just like, yeah, cool. Well, any payment system we're interested in. We love that. So in regards to, I suppose, where we're at in our journey, we've been developing hard for 8 months. Product is due for launch in Australia in about 3 weeks. We've obviously cemented some pretty cool partnerships for rollout there. So we're kind of unique because we don't, in Australia, we will take product to market ourselves, but we're also going to work with key partners and drivers. So whether that's like telcos or other payment providers or other fintechs or banking institutions or POS solutions, we really roll it out and go, we can give you a branded experience that's yours. It's just our capabilities, your branding. Cool. Yep. In APAC in general, look, we're rolling out to Vietnam first.
Wow.
So we've done some, so that was that came about really interestingly, I guess, because we were looking for population dense countries with a decent population density that were relatively young, that had dominance around QR wallets and QR transactions. And Vietnam's actually one of the leaders. So we were kind of like, cool, okay. So we just basically hit the virtual boots running, basically put Zoom meetings out to all these execs at commercial banks. And one of them picked it up and they were like, yeah, cool. We're really interested in this. How do we do this? And we're like, okay, well, look, let's put together a scope for you. This is how it's going to look, feel, send them all the prototyping. Obviously we had to, do a lot of design changes to make it fit within their compliance and their regulatory framework. And yeah, so that'll roll out to 10,000 of their merchants in their country within 3 months. And then it'll hit the rest of their merchant base within the next 6. So, but on the back of that, Malaysia, with some banking institutions there, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Abu Dhabi, Ghana is another one, which is really interesting for us. So Africa is one of the leading nations that adopt fintech within really quickly. So, and Ghana is actually a leader of the fintech nations in all countries in Africa. So it's, it's fast becoming a very interesting journey for us we will launch product outside of Australia first and then do it here, which is generally never heard of.
Which is interesting, when you compare it to, you're talking the fintech space of how maybe the others are doing, but, obviously with that explanation, you could probably get a quick attraction on those other countries where it's almost the expected use of these different payment ways than we do in Australia. Because when you think about Australians, maybe it's cash, maybe it's with a credit card, you're not really utilizing things like your WeChat payment or QR payments and things like that. That's still just not in the cultural sort of standard here, but it is elsewhere.
It's coming. Like, I think, when people had to check in at a restaurant in QR, they're like, what is this? Yeah. Like, how does this work? And, I think it's fast becoming rapidly adopted to go, QR is everywhere. Check your menu, make your payment via that app. It's fast becoming something. So There's some really great technology coming out from Australian, other fintechs that are building these QR integrations into the payment ecosystem. And trust me, we'll be blazing a trail straight to their door to get them into our infrastructure.
No, definitely. One last thing, obviously, before we move away from FinPay as well, where's sort of your expectation then? Obviously, the tumultuous time that we had with COVID over 2020, a little bit obviously in 2021, we don't really see that going away too shortly. And we were talking just before we actually started really the podcast about everything that's happening sort of the US and how that affects Australia as well. Where do you see sort of by the end of 2021 for FinPay? What's your sort of hopes and dreams for the company there?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. Obviously, I think spreading yourself too thin too quickly is dangerous, because holes start to emerge. You obviously want to make yourself as robust as possible. So I think from a jurisdictional standpoint, we won't bring on any new jurisdictions outside of what we got. But we'll obviously look to scale and develop the merchant base that we interact with this year. So that'll be bringing in more merchants, across those networks and those jurisdictions. We'll also be further developing the product. And you would know this, every great MVP is constantly going, okay, that was not what we intended for it to be, how to work. Like, Jesus Christ, that's terrible. So you kind of start to pull things apart and really better define the user experience, better understand the landscape. And I guess the biggest thing is fintech moves so quick that you need to constantly be looking over your shoulder to really assess the market. Not so much even from a competitor space, but to see where the market may shift. It was whatever, it was from physical cards to digital cards quickly. It needs to be adaptive, and you really need to not only assess the landscape in front of you, but you can start to see bigger players behind you make moves that you may not even be seeing. So you need to really have your head on a swivel, which is often kind of difficult sometimes when you're trying to be agile, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? You're almost rushing ahead, obviously, in that sort of startup feel where you're trying to go as fast as possible. But paradoxically, you almost have to be looking back to ensure others are not sort of going to mow you down, or all of a sudden the market just turned around and move elsewhere. Look, to be fully transparent, Tyro, right? So I was a big fan of Tyro when it first came out of pre-IPO, and went at IPO, and I thought, oh, this is awesome. COVID happened, everything was going along with it. And now, obviously having a look at what the market is today, almost, in 12 months, my mindset shift as sort of a consumer of going, well, at a point I thought that those card payments and that ability is obviously going to take over as cash declined. But now there's going to be quite likely all the possibilities of the way that we can digitally pay. And, is there a case of physical payments using a credit card to, start to come down sort of in use? So obviously seeing that as a consumer, seeing that change, I can't imagine what it would be like in the actual space, working there, to be, having to be on a 360-degree check-in to see what's going on around you.
And I think you're right. The rise of the digital asset or digital token or digital cash, China's trialing it. There's a couple of countries in Europe doing it, the digital yuan. It's not, look, it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I think it's going to be I think the ecosystem and the entire landscape will shift in the next 12 months. And it'll be interesting to see where it falls, because a lot of people are kind of going, is it a thing? Is it not a thing? And we're all kind of standing around scratching our heads, except for probably the guys in the Reserve Bank who know exactly what's going on, but who knows?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, and I probably see it interestingly in the space where it's probably the slowest moving, which is in the federal taxation level. And some of that stuff is still, years behind what is even currently in the market today. They're still trying to catch up with what's, cryptocurrency and how that's going through the marketplace. It's something that obviously is still around, but began a long time ago. And even now, just in the way the digital payments, that's going to be quite a big fluctuating thing. A question for you, Ian, as well, right? So companies, you obviously, it's, FinPay, and there's also Nextform as well. You've got a couple of companies, and, we talked about a previous one from your first one as well. So you've got a few there. In terms of actually building up the individuals that you work with, what has been, I guess, your biggest learning there in terms of hiring individuals? Have you found that there was a mistake, or there was some learnings, obviously, from the multiple companies that you've started up now that you've gone, okay, if I had to do it all over again, this would be sort of my idea when it comes to hiring individuals?
Yeah, look, I've learned that the hard way. I've been burnt a couple of times. and it just falls, the wheels just fall off completely. It's, not so much to the point that you get legal guy, lawyers involved, but, you just kind of, there's a very big disdain about each other, and you're just like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. And then the feeling is often mutual. You generally feel it. But when it comes to hiring great team members, like, biggest thing is, I guess, do they share your vision? Like, they don't have to be a visionary, but do they? And I don't think you can have two visionaries in a company because they clash. I think, do they share your vision? Do they believe in the pain that's being experienced? And do they believe in the end goal of building something great? And that's how I've managed to build some pretty great teams. Like, FinPay Technology has a team of about 30. We've got 35 now. And NextForm has a team of about 23. Including management as well as developers and engineers and QA and everything like that. So finding that talent is not necessarily easy. It can be quite difficult, particularly finding it. But I've been quite lucky because I often stumble across them at networking events.
Right.
And that's it. Like, I think the startup community in Brisbane is in Queensland is quite, great. You've got guys like FinTech Queensland, PropTech BNE, these are organizations and advocacy groups that are there to support you. And you're going to run into people there that believe in what you're doing because they're interested in that space. So, we, and even the universities like, QUT or UQ, they do those, alumni and startup kind of events. And just speaking to people there and just explaining what you're doing is they're like, cool, I'd love to get a coffee and dig into it a bit deeper because I've experienced that pain or that really sucked or whatever. And when it comes to great talent from an I guess if I look at NextForm, I've got such an amazing management team on that side. Like Sam, so he's my COO and one of my co-founders. He's worked at PwC, Chandler McLeod. He is a financial controlling whiz. Like, I hate Excel. Like, I don't know how to use it. Like, I really, the macro and all that stuff in it, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So much so that he locks all the sheets so I can't break anything in there, which is really funny. But, like he's got that cultural experience from working at those big firms. He understands how company culture should be and how it's incorporated and really the day-to-day operational side. You look at Anna, she's got 10 years experience in property management. Perfect. Who else to offer guidance on a prop tech than someone who's worked in a property management office for near 10 years to explain the pain to you. That is how you become a solution architect. Find someone that's worked in that space and be like, why did it suck?
Yep. And
they'll tell you. They will always tell you. Everybody wants to get it off their chest. And then looking forward to that, I interacted with guys like Ben Rich. He's built a multi-million-dollar startup and led an exit and an acquisition in the energy sector. We tap into energy in rentals because you have to get your electricity and gas connected. So, and you start to see, and then obviously a follow-on from that is those people introduce you to people that they think would be a good fit. So my head of product, Warren, he came on the back of an introduction from Ben. And this guy, Warren, is fantastic. He's had 20 years experience designing front-end user experience. Like, he's such a whiz and he's amazing. And every time he tells me something, I'm like, holy shit, that blows my mind. And then Tom is our last member to come on from a CTO perspective. And I think you get all these great guys, you get CFOs, COOs and everything like that. But the biggest thing you need in tech is a technical founder. Because if you're not a technical person, I used to say, we'd have a dev meeting every week or every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And they'd be like, hey, we're doing this. And I'd be like, I have no idea what that means, but you keep doing it. Good work. And you're just trying to be proactive and positive and supportive. And you don't want to seem like the person that asks a stupid question and go, what does that actually mean? Can you explain all this to me? Because you're supposed to be that kind of guy. So that's what, Tom really provides dedicated strategy and execution about our product roadmap for the next 5 years. It's all broken down. It's all itemized. We have a budget for every single thing we're going to do. And he makes us adhere to that. And he speaks enough, what I call English, and then developer to migrate them together and speak to me so I understand where we're at and where we're going.
Yep.
So that's kind of it. Yeah, it's really about, I guess, finding people that share that kind of vision with you and really want to make something that's pretty profound. Doesn't always work all the time, but that's the joys of being in a startup. You
Yes.
take the risk with it and go, yeah. But you can hold your head high and go, cool. We built something that was great. Maybe it was before its time. Maybe it was overshot by someone else. But cool, it's a great product, and we're really proud. I would never be disappointed with anything that I've ever put into the market, because it's still a feat in itself to launch a product.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think it's just interesting because you obviously touched on this a little bit earlier, but the ability to not be scared to hire people that are usually a lot better than you at those specific things that you need them to do. Like I know a lot of founders, and myself personally, back in the day, where you would think you want to be the person who knows everything, is doing everything, is involved with everything. The reality is, if you want to have a company that's scalable, right, you need to be able to get yourself out of the way and let the people who are the experts and the masters in those areas in the craft to do what's right. And you're almost sort of the conductor, I guess, as a CEO or the founder, just kind of get everyone on the same path and the same vision and getting them moving towards the same direction.
Yeah, and I guess it's all about execution. Like, look, it's most like great CEOs of companies, and I think Jeff Bezos defines it the best. He goes, I don't wake up in the morning and think about what I'm doing today. I wake up in the morning about thinking about what I'm doing 5 years from now, which I think is, that resonated with me. I was like, cool, that's how you survive. Not saying you don't take notice of what you're doing day to day, but it's allocated to someone and delegated to someone to manage and monitor that. If you're not thinking 5 years ahead, then when you get to that 5-year mark and you're still in the same spot, you haven't moved or shifted or developed anything new, you're going to be surpassed pretty quickly, if not even before that 5-year mark, to be honest.
Well, yeah, realistically, right? Talking to FinPay, talking tech sector, 5 years is almost like a lifetime in some of the other industries, right? So it could be, yeah, you look away, you kind of put the hood down, and a year later you go, actually, the market's changed completely on me, and you got to be always on top of that. Have you found the role of moving as when you were a founder, and obviously now with a lot of individuals, sort of the CEO, have you found any, I guess, challenges, or I guess a positive that you went, okay, this is what it means to actually be a CEO? Because it's different to be a CEO and to be a manager of people, and that sort of direct execution of a day-to-day.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think when you get to a certain, I think managing people and being a CEO they're still very much intertwined, because you interact with your management team on the day-to-day. And that might be 7 to 10 different personalities that you need to monitor and manage, and really understand how to interact with. What's their why? Why are they here? What really drives them? And that's how you kind of get things done quickly, because if you engage them in a way that's going to make their mind think and drive and be engaged, then they're going to get everything done a lot quicker. Whereas if you just kind of go at everyone with the same approach, it's just not going to work. But particularly, I think once you start to bring in those management team people, the C-suite, as you call them, your day-to-day changes pretty drastically, because you're there to either speak to investors, speak to stakeholders, speak to large partnerships. Like within FinPay, that's my role, is I look at emerging markets and speak at the big partner level. So if there's a big commercial bank in South Korea, let's take South Korea, for example, they generally want to interact with the CEO first. So that's my kind of segue to step in and explain the product, explain the vision, explain where we're going, explain how we've done it, explain our existing partners, how do we do it, how does it work? And then after that, it's generally, cool, well, let's engage our tech team. Sweet. Then it shifts to the CTO. And then after that, as it moves through the management teams, or through the engineering side or through the product side, I generally start to take a step back and I look for the next opportunity, or I have the next opportunity presented to me and I go there. It's much more around, I guess, corporate compliance and managing that expectation, and managing stakeholder expectation particularly. The big thing is you've got shareholders after that. Your job is to increase the share price. If you're not doing that, you're not a good CEO. You're there to drive value. But within that, you've also got to make sure you maintain your alliance with your team and manage them correctly and better understand them as humans, because look, we're all people and stuff happens in the day to day. So I like to be, a little bit of both. I know that's not going to last forever, but it's nice to do it while it lasts.
I was going to say, do it as much as possible, right? Before, if everything is going well and FitPay all of a sudden, it goes 10x, 100x, then you go, okay, well, it's obviously a good thing, but you obviously have to step back and shift the role of what it is to be that CEO in a larger company. It's
Exactly.
interesting you point that out. I know it's one of those things where with companies when they go in I think it's a 3 and 10 rule. You multiply by 3, then by 10, then to your sort of 30 into 100. It almost changes and shifts how a company operates. And even the discussions and the interactions that you have. So obviously, as a CEO, you'd go through that transition of what it's like to be, a CEO of a company with 3 people, 30 people, 100 people. That obviously shifts as it goes along.
Yeah, I certainly think you look, I think a founding CEO's time is relatively limited. If they, like you said, if they scale to be a company that's, even sometimes 10x or 100x, if the growth trajectory is so massive, get out of the way quick. You are going to need to bring someone in because, and not that you're inexperienced or anything like that, but that kind of management style really needs to be handled by someone who's got experience in there, which is why you see great CEOs, step in when an IPO is going to happen. They go, I've taken 10 companies public. They're there from a corporate governance perspective. And a lot of CEOs move to an innovation or a revenue executive or wherever they may sit within the business, but they're still there driving innovation and really that focus and that vision. That's what they're there for. You don't want me doing the day-to-day corporate governance stuff. It's boring. That's not what you're about.
Yeah.
But other people get a kick out of it. So yeah, it's very interesting when you see companies that go. You very rarely, I think, you find, except for the likes of even Twitter and those guys. I think Jack Dorsey's probably the rarity that he manages 2 massive billion-dollar companies and he's the CEO of both. Twitter, he got asked to come back, but it's still, 1 in a million to do that. There's some rarities out there that do it, but I don't think I would pick one of those. To be brutally honest.
So for yourself then, Ian, what does a successful day look like for you? Obviously handling multiple things when it comes to business. And this may be a little bit more personal as well to see how you structure a day. What would a successful day look like for you? So from waking up, sort of going to bed.
Yep. So wake up at about 4:30. I generally read the news, find out what's going on in the world, read the markets. Biggest tip, if you're, and this is probably not a tip, but I do it. I love Google Alerts or Google News. So I've got all the targeted keywords around my business within that. And I basically just do a download of everything from the night while I've been sleeping. See if there's anything of interest, see what's going on, see what's happening in the markets. And then generally come in, check my email, have a look around, have a cup of coffee, then go to the gym, 6 o'clock on the dot, 6 days a week. And then, come back, have some breakfast and then get on with my day. That's generally about 7:30. So I start then. I also consult for a couple of other companies just on the side. So we do a quick 5-minute stand up with them every day. So have one of those with the various businesses or companies and founders that I interact with, see how they're all going, do a bit of a check-in. And then we do our FinPay stand up. That goes for about half an hour with the management team. Download from our previous day, any requests, we basically do a bit of a huddle and find out where we're going today. Any meetings that anyone needs help, really in-depth stuff to figure out where people what they've done, what are they doing today, and do they need help with anything?
Yep.
Everything's generally all good. Jump onto the dev guys and see if there's anything happening there, see where we're at, see if there's any issues, bugs, so on and so forth. And then I try to theme my days generally. So one will be, kind of administrative and general. The next will be probably marketing and content and PR and communications. The next one will be sales, really discussing where we're going. The next one may be partnerships. So that's my really intensive day. And then Friday is generally for investors, stakeholder relations and engaging with people or doing great podcasts like with you guys.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's really cool. In that space, right? So obviously that sounds like I enjoy the structure that you have in the mornings as well, right? When you've got something set, like waking up at the same time, going to the gym at the same time, at least sets you up for whatever comes after that. You've at least gotten that out of the way. You've got your research, you've got your sort of your workout, you've got your mind in the right space. In you go. Where do you find time so separately to, I guess, what you're talking about with your own market and business work, to kind of find time to reread things like 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel or other sources of information that can kind of just you give you a bit more learning? Does that sort of fall in the night time or just sort of whenever you can fit them in?
Mate, I walk to my gym, so I generally try to
Right.
walk a lot of places. So I walk to my gym. It's not long, it's probably a 15-20 minute walk. Walk up there, and I chuck my headphones in, listen. And Audible is the greatest thing. That's the greatest platform ever. If you ever want to digest information quickly, it's phenomenal. But look, other times, when I'm at, and I try, and look, I love Netflix like anybody else. I don't mind a good binge series on a Sunday just to try and unplug. But when I'm sitting in bed, it really doesn't. You'd be surprised if you add up a couple of quick minutes. Like if you're getting a bus into the city, don't watch Netflix on your phone. Take a book, read it. Then that's 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes there, 15 minutes home. That's half an hour every day. You can read probably a book back to back in 3 weeks. 4 weeks, maybe 4 weeks at the most. I would say 3. So it's really about, I guess, just capturing that time. And it's not so much wasted time. It's just time where you'd just be sitting there doing something else. Like, it's kind of like whatever. It's there. You may as well use it to your max.
Yeah, definitely. And specifically, because I know that you did call it out recently, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. What did you find so valuable? Because I definitely enjoy that book, and a lot of stuff from Peter is pretty awesome. What did you find valuable probably the second time you reread that book?
Mate, I'm still listening to it. I'm listening to it this time. I'm not reading it, which is unique because it's not him narrating it, which is kind of strange. But anyway, you can kind of that's what I imagine his voice sounds like now. Look, I guess the interesting thing is I associate books, and this is why I read them a couple of times. So I've read, Play Bigger, which is all about market creation, category domination, 3 times now in the last 2 years. And a lot of people are like, why do you read the same book? And I'm like, well, my mindset and where I am now in my life has changed pretty dramatically. So I like to look at it and go, cool, well, I've read it when I was here, and now I'm going to read it when I'm here, see what's different. And it changes every single time, and it blows my mind. But in regards to 0 to 1, look, I think the adoption of technology and disruption around, don't go out and do something incredibly mind-blowingly unique. Those guys are there, and there's another book called The Outsiders, which is also brilliant about these guys. They really, if you've read it, you've read it. I won't go into it, but it's really about really understanding the market and what they call disruption. And I don't like the word disruption. I think collaboration is a much bigger and better word to use, particularly in 2021 after so many blows have been dealt. I think great tech can integrate with great tech, and we can grow, some phenomenal kind of markets together. But anyway, look, my library is full of startup books and everything like that. It's actually, Bad Blood. Bad Blood was a great read. The Theranos read, read that. Awesome. Phenomenal.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to actually read the book, but definitely obviously seen the Netflix and a couple of videos. And, if it digs into it a little bit more, obviously, of what occurred, that would be really, really interesting. And what about outside, obviously, of just business and reading for learning and everything? What sort of the hobbies or the side things that you like to do, or sometimes on the weekends, is kind of like unwind? Because one interesting thing actually about you, Ian, was obviously when we do the mere mortal sort of conversations, we'll generally find, what's a little bit of information we can chat about, usually be LinkedIn and other things. And one thing that called out to me was you're a very personal guy when it comes to some of the social stuff, which a lot of people aren't. So, is it a choice that you make to just be a little bit more private in some of these instances? And what are those sort of hobbies or those things that you tend to do to sort of unwind?
Mate, I'm a massive foodie. Like, I love good food. Like, it is my one vice in this world, and my partner's probably going to kill me for saying that. But, and I also have a lovely girlfriend, Kira, who I spend a lot of time with, and we do, going over that, going and enjoying things together. Because I think, we both work so hard, and the hours are pretty terrible sometimes. You're up late doing a Zoom call with some other country. So I think I really try to chisel time out for us to do things. And, that's little stuff like cooking dinner and sitting down and watching a movie or whatever, going out for dinner, and whatever it may be. And in regards to my being private. That's I didn't think I was that private. Okay. It's a new one. Look, I wasn't for a very long time. I would put everything on Instagram. And I guess I kind of, I read a lot of stuff and look, I saw a lot of things from a lot of successful people who came unstuck by doing that. And I was like, okay, I don't really want that to happen to me, because once it's out there in the cloud, it's out there in the cloud.
It's out.
Like,
Yeah.
And look, I put a lot of retrospect on actually enjoying a moment, like, going out and whether that's going to Cork and Chroma and doing a painting and having a glass of wine, sit there and enjoy that. It's a great experience. You don't need to have your phone in your hand putting it on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Enjoy it, because if you're there with someone, enjoy it with them, because they will appreciate it 10 times more, and so will you. So that's why I'm a little bit, not too. I put a lot of business stuff on my socials, and that's pretty much it now. And my dog, I'm obsessed with my French bulldog, and Kira, obviously my partner.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of the only reason I called it out. It reminded me of Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Where he's almost the most public private person there is, and you sort of showcase a few of those things. But you can obviously see what you're doing, the businesses, the work, and some of the close people. But apart from that, it's like, no, it's my private life. I don't have to share it. As you say, it doesn't have to be out in the cloud for everyone to see. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Just because it's a social platform doesn't mean you have to socialize everything. But, yeah.
That's right. Look, Ian, thanks so much for taking time, obviously, to have a conversation with us and be immortals. Where can people find you or reach out if they want to sort of contact you at all?
Look, LinkedIn is probably the best one. Look, I've got Twitter and I've got Instagram, but like you said, I don't really use them that much. LinkedIn, if you're interested in any conversation or you want to chat, LinkedIn is the best one. It's just Ian Parke. You'll find me, Parke with an E.
Yep, excellent. Now, obviously, hopefully, this has come out probably just a little bit into February, but I hope to look back at 12 months time and go, dang, that's where I could still see the origins of UK, and then we're seeing where it is now. So that'll be fantastic. Ian, any last things for the guys?
No, look, I think the biggest thing I've learned over the last couple of years, and it feels like it's been a lifetime now, is just and look, I kind of harp this on it at a lot of people when I talk to them, is just be prepared to make mistakes, but don't get yourself down in the dumps. Everybody makes mistakes. That's life. It's how you learn from them that really makes you different. That's something that's resonated with me as I've carried through from being 18 years of age. That's my that's a cheesy ending one-liner that you can kind of take to the bank.
I love it. Excellent. Ian Parke, thank you very much.